Hello everybody, my name's Chris and I buy records. Except at the moment I don't buy so many, simply because the financial crisis has hit. I'm not destitute by any stretch of the imagination, but I did find myself spending quite a lot of money on the things that I really like, and sometimes you have to kind of take stock. You have to think, no, you know what, I have to buy things like food and toilet paper and things like that rather than expensive records. But it led me to a kind of thought process about how I view the vinyl community and the things that are shared. I've touched upon this in previous videos, my whole thing about the concept of audiophilia. I think that when you get into a hobby, then you do end up falling into these pitfalls of thinking, you know, I do want the best I can get. I want my equipment to be the best I can get. And there is nothing whatsoever wrong with that. I just want to point that out from the start. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But what I do find with the vinyl community sometimes is that, firstly, it kind of really promotes the idea of FOMO. There is this idea of a kind of a rush to go out and buy certain things, you know, especially if they're limited or if they're, you know, things like mobile fidelity albums or something like that could sell out. There is this big kind of pressure that some people, like me, feel to put upon ourselves to say, no, we should go out and get this. I will. So this is endemic of the John Coltrane Blue Train reissue. I was in Spain when that was released, and I actually ordered it kind of while I was away to arrive when I got back because I was so worried about missing it out, and they pressed thousands upon thousands of that. But what is interesting to me is that a lot of videos are, let's be honest, they're not talking so much about the relationship that we have with records or our interest in the music. A lot of videos that appear within the vinyl community are simply about accumulation. And the issue with that, I find, is that there's no standpoint as to our own financial situations. You get certain people sharing videos who quite clearly have a huge amount of disposable money and can afford to get every single audiophile pressing or every single original pressing, or not every single original pressing, but you know, they won't think anything of spending £500-600 on, you know, a record. More power to them. Not saying that at all, but the channels that I'm really interested in at the moment are the channels that champion the music and the vinyl format as being a conduit towards that music. There's plenty that all of us enjoy about records, simply because, to me, and I'm sure to most people watching this, they are the most satisfying format out there. There's something almost indescribably magic about it. And there's plenty of videos out there about the tactile feel and how we live in a digital age and we need to have connection with our music. I'm not sure what it is. It's probably that, and it's probably lots more other things about why people like us spend our money on these things. But I just think it's important sometimes to have that bit of reality check and to accept that sometimes it's simply okay to be okay. So I got this, and I'm afraid it's another Miles Davis album. I seem to post nothing but Miles Davis albums, but there is variety later on. So I got this as a Christmas present from my mum, of all people. So she got me a copy of Miles in the Sky, Miles Davis, and as you can clearly see from the hype, it is a music on vinyl. So I've been after a copy of Miles in the Sky for quite some time. I've been looking at originals. I was looking for a long time at Canadian presses. They're slightly cheaper than the American counterparts, and I do have it on quite good authority that they are in many ways superior than American pressings. The pressing plants weren't quite as stretched. They had slightly higher quality control at that time. I was also looking at things like the mobile fidelity version, which was prohibitively expensive. And then I thought, no, you know what? It's more important for me to have the record than it is to have this so-called prestige pressing of it. So stuck this on my Christmas list, ended up getting it, and you know what? It sounds great. It sounds really, really good. It's really detailed. The everything you would want from a good sounding record is here. It sounds detailed. It sounds warm. It has good dynamic range. The soundstage is really good. There's good separation in the stereo mix. And it did make me kind of stop and think, why on earth am I actually spending huge amounts of money on imported audiophile pressings from the likes of Mobile Fidelity or Analog Productions, etc., etc. And I think that there's a big kind of shift into these styles of pressings simply because in my little world, and I'm aware that we are all living in our bubbles. Yeah, so in my particular bubble, the Tone Poet and then Blue Note 80 Classic Vinyl series from Blue Note have really kind of highlighted what can be done at an affordable price point for really, really good pressings. So I'm sure you all know this, but Tone Poet and Blue Note Classic Vinyls, they are all Kevin Gray cut, all from analog tape. You know, completely analog chain throughout the whole thing. The Tone Poets are slightly nicer in the sense that they're pressed at RTI rather than at Optimal in Germany. Slightly better pressing plant. The packaging is a little bit better. And they've got that kind of Joe Harley magic. So Joe Harley, who is the person who came up with Music Matters, which are now really expensive. It's a carbon copy of that. So you get that, but you get these like really, really, really good pressings at not a huge amount of money. It's probably more than perhaps, you know, they cost more than that cost. Don't get me wrong. But that said, the Classic Vinyl series, which is exactly the same way, so Kevin Gray cut, mastered at coherent, analog tape, pressed at optimal, normal packaging, they will run you back no more than that. So in a sense, we have been spoilt by this, but there is a lot to be said for pressings like that, what I like to call everyman pressings that you can go into your local HMV and turn your nose up at shops like HMV all you want. They still form a function, and also they're, let's be honest, they're sometimes the only place that people actually have readily available to them to buy records. So they're the ones that are in there. And I've got a couple of other examples, one of which is slightly older, but another couple of examples of records that, as far as I know, are still in print, will have people turning their noses up slightly at the pressing, kind of the sourcing and the mastering, but actually is really good. So this is one. I listened to this week. This is The Kinks, We Are the Preservation Society. So this is actually cut by Kevin Gray. This is undoubtedly from digital. I've got no doubt in my mind that this comes from a DSD transfer of analog tape. But the sound on this is just incredible. Incredible. To the extent where I wish that more of my Beatles records sounded as good as this. In the 1960s, there wasn't this smiley face EQ going on. We didn't have, you know, really, really bright cymbals and then really pounding bass. Everything was kind of cut into the middle of the dynamic range. So there's a lot of middle, and the sound of this record is both authentic and just really dynamic and really, really fun. I don't think that you would get a better sounding pressing of this anywhere. And this is a under 20 quid. You can buy absolutely anywhere pressing. I think it's an anniversary pressing. I think it's the 50th anniversary one. But really easy to get a hold of. The Arthur of the Decline, or whatever it's called, Decline of the British Empire, whatever it's called, which is the album after this. I'm not sure if Kevin Gray was involved in that, but that's another great sounding record, which comes highly recommended. So yeah, this cost me, I believe this was 18 quid, which in today's money, let's be honest, isn't a lot for a great sounding record. And then even more than that, now this is something I avoided for the longest time because of my perceived snobbery, which I'll have to go into. So this, obviously Nick Drake Pink Moon, this is 2013, Back to Black. Now Back to Black is one of those record labels. I think it's an imprint of UME, Universal Media. I think it's their kind of imprint, and they kind of own it. But they appear absolutely everywhere. If you go to any major record shop, even if you have a supermarket or something like that near you that sells records, chances are they're something like a Back to Black. And there was a lot of hostility towards Back to Black. They had a huge swathe of material that they reissued. You know, at the end of the day, they had the Universal back catalogue at their disposal, so they reissued everything. And I think it was a reissue of Nirvana's Nevermind, maybe, or a Nirvana album, or certainly something from that kind of era. Their 90s rock albums sound, I've not heard them, not really my thing, but apparently they sound particularly lousy. They're not great reproductions of that original sound. They lose a lot of kind of what makes those records good. This, however, now, to explain for people that don't know, this is Nick Drake's third and last album. It is largely one acoustic guitar and one voice, which means that the quality of the quality of the mastering really makes a difference to the listener's experience of this particular record. And I would say that this, which I paid less than £10 for, new, sealed, this is as good a representation of acoustic guitar and voice as I've ever heard. And this is not a small batch audiophile pressing. It is from master tape. It is cut from tape. I couldn't even tell you who the mastering engineer on this was. You know, it was probably, maybe it was someone great, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. Maybe it was just an in-house person at Universal. But Pink Moon by Nick Drake, well, actually all the Nick Drake albums, or the 3 Nick Drake albums, they're all the same. They're brilliant. They have the richness and the depth, and they have that analog feel to them, which I do believe can be recreated digitally. I don't think it's a thing that has to come from tape. But this has everything that you could possibly want from it. And even I listened to John Martin's Solid Air earlier in the week, and that has the same thing. The same company, Back to Black. They do really, really good jobs on these records. So if that's the case, then why do we not hear so much about these pressings being championed? Now, I have 2 theories to this. The first theory is simply that the people who tell you about the pressings that are worth having have equipment which far exceeds my own. But that said, it probably far exceeds your own as well, and probably far exceeds the majority of people's. Therefore, they are picking up on those nuances that perhaps I'm not. Yeah, completely understand that. My other theory is I do think maybe there is a slight amount of gatekeeping going on, which is this kind of, all these records are really readily available to everyone, right? You can go in, you know, the kids getting into vinyl, the 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are just getting into vinyl, and they're going in and buying stuff. There is a temptation for kind of us older people to stand there and kind of say, oh, well, you don't want that one. Actually, this company who you have to order from Germany or whatever, they do a much better pressing of this. But no, the important thing is surely is that people are having exposure to the music, and they're having music on a format that enjoys them. Now, I'm quite particular about the records I buy. I do my research a little bit. I do like nice sounding pressings. But these are all things which you can buy, you know, more or less anywhere, inexpensively. And I would absolutely, I'm trying to fan these out in a kind of playing card way. There we go. I would absolutely recommend those to anyone, no matter what stage they are at in their kind of record buying thing. I would wholeheartedly recommend all of those. You know, and it just comes back to the music is what matters, and it's about the engagement of the music. And if you want something that is a step up from, say, a CD on a cheaper player or listening to it on Spotify, and you want something that will engage you and will give you that rich experience of what putting a record on and listening to it is, I would thoroughly recommend those. So my name's Chris. I buy records, and I'll see you on the next one.